Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on the 5 obstacles to team effectiveness. This is a Maersk case study. My name is Charles Rogel, and I'm the Director of Business Development for DecisionWise, and I'll be moderating our presentation today. Before we begin, I have a few instructions. First, you can either listen to the webinar from your computer speakers or dial in over the telephone, but everyone's going to be on mute. If you do have questions, please submit them using the question feature on the toolbar. And during the last 5 minutes or so of the webinar, we'll address those questions. The webinar today is scheduled to last for 30 minutes, and a day or two after the webinar, I will be sending you out an email with a link to these slides. I'm joined today by our presenters, Marco Avila from Panama City, Panama, and also Linda Linfield here in our offices in Provo, Utah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Marco. I'm glad you're still there. Marco is the General Manager of Human Resources at the Maersk Caribbean Sea Cluster, headquartered in Panama City, Panama. He's known for identifying issues in team effectiveness, implementing best practices, and taking the time and investment to take teams to the next level. Linda Linfield is our Director of Talent Assessment here at DecisionWise. She's a catalyst for change with a passion for leadership development and a talent for challenging high-potential leaders to become increasingly effective. DecisionWise has been in business now for 17 years, and our focus is on conducting 360-degree feedback, employee engagement surveys, leadership development and coaching, and also organization change. I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about Maersk as well. Maersk has been the largest container ship operator and supply vessel operator in the world since 1996. And specifically today, we'll be talking about one team at Maersk. And we'll be talking about how this one team is responsible for 16% of the cargo shipments through the Panama Canal, transformed from a group of talented functional leaders with difficulty working together into a high-performance team.
And this is work that Marco and I undertook together. And so, Marco, as we get started in the webinar today, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first had the idea for doing some extended work with your leadership team there.
Thank you, Linda. We have been working with DecisionWise for 2.5 years already. And after 2 years of having individual 360 degrees evaluation, our leaders have been able to address some very specific issues. But then we realized that in the area of teamwork, we were still having some difficulty. Teamwork is for our company one of our cultural amplifiers. And we knew that we had to work hard to work better as a team. My general manager and I were committed to creating a well-functioning team, and we knew it was just not going to happen by only focusing at the individual levels. Even though our cluster had received some recognition for being a good team, we have sometimes also been used as benchmark with other clusters, and have been chosen to pilot programs in different functions. But we understood that even being good functional experts, we knew we could also do a lot better. It doesn't matter if you are good at what you do, there is always room for improvement, and we wanted to do it. We were ready to do it as well.
Yeah, that was really important. And over the course of us working together and with input from each of your team members, we identified 5 critical obstacles to the team's effectiveness. One was the functional team primacy. And this was, we'll talk about these in more detail, but Marco, before we do that, why don't you share with our listeners what you saw here? What was
well, we are a group of 10 senior leaders. That includes our general manager as well. And each of us, of course, has our own obstacles to overcome. But as a group, I will say it was a lack of understanding and trust. It is not that we didn't think each other made a strong contribution to the team, but we didn't trust each other to have our backs. There was a lot of internal competition among our group.
So there were some functional team primacy issues in terms of people coming to the table as functional leaders first in their minds, right? There was a lack of unifying common goal. There was some strategic misalignment. and some internal competition among team members. But what came up over and over was this lack of trust. Not that we didn't, not the total lack of trust for each other, but the sense, right, that we didn't have each other's backs, that we couldn't count on each other to represent our best interests or our function's best interests. Let's turn to our listeners now. Charles, do you have something for us here?
So I'd like to conduct a poll, and we'll describe more in depth what each of these items are, but we wanted to get some feedback from the audience on the, I guess, the obstacle that you would find to be most prevalent in your organization. So I'm going to launch the poll here. And Linda, could you provide a little bit more explanation maybe on some of these clarifications people are filling out?
Yeah, so the functional team primacy is the tendency we have when we get to a leadership team level to still focus on the functional team that we've risen to the top of. So if we're in sales, for example, we think primarily from a sales perspective and fail to take into consideration, or at least, to take into consideration or to honor the perspectives of other functions on the team. This lack of unifying common goal is not necessarily that you don't have a lack of an operational goal, but it's the common goal that causes the team to come together for a higher purpose than their functional goals. Strategic misalignment has to do with miscommunication and a difference in opinion and a difference in the way we approach accomplishing even our operational goals. So the way we get things done is misaligned. Internal competition among team members. Quite often you get to the top of your function and you serve on a leadership team, and the way you've gotten to the top is by being the absolute best functionally at what you do, and that competitive spirit comes with you to the leadership team, and you continue to compete with those who you serve with. And, you know, there's some support for that in terms of how we reward people. Even at the leadership team level, we often reward them for competition, but that's another whole topic. So internal competition gets in the way of teamwork. And then this lack of trust that I explained a little bit before, what is that sense that if I'm out of the room, my interests will not be represented, or that someone on the team is holding something back and appears like he or she is not a team player.
I'm going to close the poll now and display the results. And Linda, it's interesting, right now as we look at what the audience is viewing, lack of trust is the largest factor here. And I think it might be the culmination of some of these other problems, right, or the result of some of these other problems. But again, it's pretty well split except for item B, lack of unifying common goal.
Okay. Good. So Marco, let's talk about how we discovered these issues on your team, because we didn't come with a preconceived idea of what issues the team was facing. We did our homework. In fact, you were really proactive about this.
Yeah, I remember that a couple of years ago, our company headquarters made available 360 degrees evaluations for all of our leaders. And when that opportunity became available, we immediately decided to start the process for our leaders in the management team, and also for some of our country leaders as well. We did the 360-degree surveys, and for most of us, it was actually a very, very nice experience. It was the first time going through the process. And each also had the opportunity to discuss our results with you, Linda, and that started the journey. Since then, we have been working in creating a culture of feedback. It has created a completely different dynamic in our teams. And we now realize that feedback does not always have to be painful.
Yeah, that's right. And initially, we started by supporting the development of the individual leadership, right there, and we developed their individual leadership plans based on their own 360s that I worked together with each person and helped them create. And they individually and kind of privately initially undertook that effort and went out and had conversations with colleagues on the leadership team and tried to work through issues proactively, each one of them. They really, really caught the vision of what was possible if they took their feedback and tried to turn it into results?
Yeah, immediately after some of the discussions with you, some of them came to me and they were really, really excited about the process. And they knew that we could do something very, very important to continue developing as our team, as a team.
Okay, so just to clarify on these slides, we have a little bit of information about how, Marco, you and I worked together on this. So the first thing we did was we captured data to get beyond our assumptions and to find out what was really happening. And then, as you mentioned, you and your general manager there really had the courage and commitment to spearhead this for the whole team, and each member of the leadership team also had the courage and commitment to face down the issues, right? And then
that's right.
Yeah. And what I saw as I worked through, I did the 360 debriefs and coaching with each of the leadership team members, and what I saw that was remarkable, and I remember commenting on this to you at the time, Marco, was this tremendous willingness that each of the individuals serving on that management team, the willingness they had to be reflective and look at their own strengths and their own areas for development, and accept that they were part of creating any problems they were facing. And then there was really this belief, this belief that efforts they made would make a difference. It would make a difference to them personally, and it would make a difference to the team. So we talked a little bit about best practice and preparation for this webinar. And when Charles introduced you, he talked about your focus on best practice, Marco. You and your GM are really, that's one of the things you try to do, right?
Yeah, we try to do it all the time. And after having these 360 surveys, we also follow up with poll surveys just to make sure that everyone was actually doing something with the survey results. Because having the results and not doing anything, then that wouldn't take us anywhere. And we also held some focus groups with our employees just to make sure that they understood that we were very serious about this process.
Yeah. And when we decided to work together, that was a really happy moment for me because I had already gotten to know each of the team members individually. We had built a level of trust, and I was really excited about the opportunity of going on this journey together toward becoming a really high-functioning team. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Maersk specifically and what data really helped us to identify the issues and how critical it was to actually have the data. So Marco, there were a few things we did, right? We did some additional assessments, including a team effectiveness survey and a few other assessments to make sure that we had everything we needed in terms of data. And then I also conducted 30-minute interviews with each leader to get their perspectives.
Yeah, I think that the way that you approached this process, we really like that, especially because we felt heard. We felt that we were understood and appreciated. We had our own differences, and we learned we learn about those as well. From the data, I think that we were able to identify the sources of some of our problems, and even though we knew that we were doing our best to work well with each other, there was always room for improvement.
And starting with that data was so important. It really captures people's attention. I remember in our first session that some people were doubtful about whether or not we really had an issue in a certain area. But when we looked at the data, it showed unequivocally that yes, we had some uncomfortable things to address.
Yeah.
Right?
That data got our attention, and we knew that we couldn't run away from it.
Yeah, and you had the courage to stay with me in some really tough conversations, and we really opened a new level of honesty with the team, didn't we?
Yeah. I really believe that the data was essential to start the change process.
Yeah, I do too. And let's, on the next slide, we have some information about what kind of data Marco and I used in this process. And I'll just overview these briefly. And Charles, you might want to go and show, I know most, a lot of people, especially Maersk folks who are on the call today, have seen the Leadership 360, but they may not have seen our team effectiveness survey. So the team effectiveness survey looks in look and feel is quite similar to the individual 360, but it focuses on things that are critical for a team success. And so again, it's a fairly short survey and just very valuable in this process. The next thing we used in the context of this team, because there were some obvious stylistic differences in the way people approached their work and their decision making and the way they communicated with each other and the level of trust they experienced. And so we used a style preference assessment. The one we used here was MBTI. It's the one I've worked with for over 20 years and have great confidence in the results it produces. It's a non-judgmental instrument that we found tremendously valuable. Then we also used a conflict resolution self-assessment, and this was to bring some awareness around how each of us prefers to enter conflict situations and get those conflicts resolved. And finally, we used emotional intelligence self-assessment, and that one was used to help us see our level of self-awareness and ability to deal with our emotional context and our proficiency in regulating our own choices when it came to our behaviors. So Marco, big aha moment for you as we went through these different instruments. What did you see?
Well, we haven't finished yet the process, but for us, a big aha moment, I think, was related to the impact of our personal style preferences had on other aspects of our team dynamics. We discovered that we were judging each other harshly based on our ways of working instead of flexing our styles to ensure each leader could offer his maximum value to the team, and especially to the business. As soon as we recognized this, we knew that we had to think and behave differently.
Yeah, I remember one example was there was the sense that there was one person on your team who was called the Black Panther, right? Because he would sit in meetings and he would absorb what everyone else was talking about, and then at some point when he found an opening and he was ready, he would speak, and his thoughts were fully organized, and it seemed like he had come to the meeting prepared with his thoughts already in order, and that he was being kind of manipulative, that he was waiting for an opening where he could just make things go his, speak up and then make things go his way, and that he had planned it and that he had pounced. And what we found as we worked through the style preference assessment was we found that this person actually had a preference for introversion. So it was his natural style to kind of hang back and listen and carefully consider what other people said as he built his own perspective. And when he spoke, it was fully thought out. While others had more of a preference for extroversion and they were bouncing ideas around and it was more free flow, this other person was kind of sitting quietly and thinking through things. And so what appeared on the surface to be disingenuous or false or not trustworthy or not part of playing like a team actually turned out to be a stylistic preference that we could now identify and find ways of working with so that we could grow in trust for each other. It was a big moment for us, wasn't it? Marco, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. I said that was a big moment for us, wasn't it?
It was really. And just discovering how each one of us is different and our preferences really gave us a lot of opportunities to have better conversations and better communication with each other.
Okay, good. Yep, and so we're going to go through each of these, the 5 areas of the team effectiveness that came up for your team. We have about 10 minutes left on the webinar, so we're going to move through these fairly quickly just to give people a sense of what it looks like and how to address these issues. So the first one is functional team primacy, and I explained this a little bit earlier, but this is the tendency we have to look first at our own function. And it manifests itself in functional self-interest and how deeply I care about my own, how any decision or policy or opportunity affects my team members. And I typically argue from this point of view. I kind of feel like I'm in there to represent my function, and I've got to make the right things happen for my function. Right? And then we have to decide to resolve it. We have to make a different decision. And do you want to talk about that a little bit, Marco?
Yeah, I think that was very big for us because for our team members, we had to really make a conscious choice to make the leadership team our first team. We all knew that we were part of a specific function, but having the leadership team as our first team, I think it was the most important aspect. And in order to do that, we also have to spend some time trying to figure out what that meant in terms of changing behaviors. And we had to create some rules of engagement to actually help us in the process.
Yep, this is a major great breakthrough for your team, identifying the heart of the issue, deciding what the appropriate behavior was, and then following through and holding each other accountable.
Yeah, it was really big. And I think you, Linda, put us through some very tough exercises that you specifically designed for us. And I think that those experiences have ensured that we have the skill and now the will to see things through each other's eyes. And coming back to the rules of engagement, we have always revisited them, and we have added some others, and believe me, we challenge each other if these are not followed.
Yeah, it's really good to see. The next thing we want to talk about is the lack of a unifying team goal, and this you all had a crystal clear operational goal. So what was missing here for you?
I think that what we realized was that the overarching operational goal was not enough. It covered only the what we wanted to achieve, and not necessarily the how and the why. So during this process of working with you, Linda, I think we were able to clarify our expectations of each other on becoming what now we call an elite team that could deliver in a well and coordinated, supportive operational goal. We could do anything in a better way, and this was, I believe, another major breakthrough for us.
Yeah, I agree. So the way we address this is we align on an overarching goal, both in terms of the how, or the what and the how. And then we model the collaborative behavior among each other. And Marco, you referred to the rules of engagement, which are critical for the team's success. And I've been so impressed with the way you all very respectfully hold each other accountable for those. And what that's allowed us to do is really to minimize surprises for each other and start to create an environment where we give each other the benefit of the doubt, and we're really committed to supporting each other first.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so let's go on to strategic misalignment. So strategic misalignment was another issue. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yes, this is also related to the functional team primacy and the misalignment of functional goals. The way we have things set up didn't allow us to win together. So in order for one functional group to succeed, sometimes another had to fail. We had KPIs that were colliding. So now we have calibration so we can discuss which KPIs are most important for the whole group. We are also aligning cross-functionally so that the most important goal for all of us is the same. We are doing a better job of coordinating our efforts, which means our messaging is aligned and integrated. We all speak business. For the first time ever, our sales and customer service groups feel like they are one team. And this is because of the changing perception and behavior of the leaders.
Yeah, and you're getting really great feedback from the other levels of teams in your organization, right?
Yeah, they can hardly believe it. We did not have to mention anything about the work we were doing at some of our direct reports, and because they came directly and asked us, what have you done? Why are you more comfortable with each other? And I think that they have definitely felt the difference.
Yeah, that's great. You've told me some really great stories about that, and I wish we had more time to tell those stories. The next aspect we want to talk about is the internal competition. So internal competition was also at play. Your team members are alphas, right? They say, yeah, I'm an alpha, and they're go-getters. So tell us a little bit about that.
We all know our stuff, and I believe that we are good at what we do, and we want to be seen as the best.
Yep, this is another place where your rules of engagement have helped. The team members have established norms for kind of moderating that tendency they have. The critical factor here that I've seen is that your GM is really committed to each of his team members becoming not only functional leaders but business leaders. He's really setting a stellar example for the team maintaining a leadership presence and being able to represent the whole leadership team. He's fearless in this space.
Yeah, I call him courageous because he's not only smart, but he's direct, honest, and absolutely clear about his intention that each of us be at the top of our games. Not only functionally, but also as part of the elite team. Yeah. He wants us to make a real difference and be recognized as a strong leadership team.
Yeah. And this team is now characterized by confident humility and open and direct feedback, and the ability that each leader is demonstrating to represent each other's points of view and the overall team. So lastly, and most importantly, we have lack of trust. This is one that those who are listening are saying is really at play in their organizations. This was another really big one for you all, right, Marco?
Yeah, I believe this is one of the areas where we have made the biggest shift. It is also, I believe, the most difficult to address because there is so much history and habit in the way of us really trusting each other.
Yep, we've been working on it now for more than 6 months directly. And what did we do that you think caused the biggest shift or the biggest breakthrough?
Well, I think we are now working on a common vision, what is what we want to be known for in 5 years from now. And this is a leadership project that we will have never undertaken if not for going through this process with you, Linda. We have also spent a lot of time on one-on-ones. We have openly told each other why we appreciate having them on the team. And we have many other activities that have helped us to trust each other more.
So the 3 of the things that I've seen in how we've, as together, have addressed this lack of trust is we've made it safe to talk openly with each other and to dig into the real issues. We've insisted that we tell each other what's obvious to us that's not obvious to them, and vice versa. And we check ourselves, and before we assume motive, or maybe even after we assume motive, we check ourselves and we make sure that we don't jump to conclusions about motive before we have a conversation with each other and before we think about each other's stylistic preferences. So in summary, the work with your team, Marco, and the work that you're doing deeper in the organization now is addressing all 5 of these functional issues, or all 5 of these team effectiveness issues. Functional team primacy, the lack of a unifying common goal, the strategic misalignment, internal competition among team members, and this lack of trust that kind of is core to the other 4 as well. So that concludes our webinar today, and I want to thank you for joining me, Marco, and doing this with me, and wondered if there's any last observations you'd like to make.
Yes, thank you, Linda. As I said at the beginning, in any team, there is always room for improvement. And we sometimes believe that we do not have the time to go through a process like this. we might also be afraid of not reaching the desired outcome. But I believe that if you have identified any of these obstacles in your own team, go ahead and work on them. The reward is worth the pain. Thanks, Linda, for having me in this webinar today.
Well, thank you so much for doing it with me. The slides you'll receive at the end are slides that just one slide that shows you the iterative loop we use with Marco's team. It's been a real pleasure to work with you, not only on this webinar, but on this tremendous leadership journey that you've undertaken as a team. So thanks again, Marco, and thanks to all of you who've joined us.
Great. And
Thank you.
This is Charles Rogel again. Thanks, Marco and Linda. I'll be sending out an email to all the participants with a link to the slides, and we look forward to having you join us on our next webinar. Have a great day.